Conversations on Co-Production is Expert Link's free monthly meeting where people come along to chat all things co-production with like-minded individuals. These podcast episodes are taken directly from the conversations, so if you like what you hear, come along and join us by signing up via the link below. Keeping up the co-production momentum and maintaining lived experience group engagement. You've set up a co-production process and got a lived experience group together, but how do you keep momentum going, and what do you do to keep people coming back?
Things like making sure that whatever activities or time you're using is worthwhile for the people that are attending, so it's not just a case of let's come and have a chat and there's no kind of real purpose to it. So people like to know what's going to be expected of them, what you're going to be talking about, having something generally that's quite focused but not too prescriptive, if that makes sense. So there's kind of a theme and there's a kind of sense of where the conversation might develop or needs to be going, but it's not like this is what's going to happen. Something that's quite interactive. We use a combination of online and in person, and it's trying to engage as many people as possible, so sometimes mixing it up a little bit and doing a bit of both can be helpful. Making sure whatever you do, people get feedback from it, so if you're engaging people and asking for their views or asking them to help with the project or the design of something, that you've got to have that feedback loop to come back at the end. So even if it's that nothing's happened yet, or this isn't going to happen because, which is, that's the reality sometimes, but just letting people know what's happened with all of that stuff that they spent that time doing. And then being honest and just kind of being upfront about what is possible, I think, as well. I think that's the thing. Don't make promises that you're not going to keep at the end of the day. So don't, if you're engaging people to be part of a design process for a system or a service or something like that, be honest about what the reality of that is likely to be. So don't say, right, you've got carte blanche to, do what you like, when that's not going to be the case, because it's that you're just going to, people won't come back after that. They won't trust you. So I think there's a lot in there about being honest and upfront and kind of really about how far that co-production process can go.
I'm working with my local authority in a residence kind of forum to improve services for temporary accommodation. I've got a finger in quite a few different pies. And one of the things that brought me here is that I'm just interested in this idea of co-production and the kind of power imbalances around it, because I feel very patronized a lot of the time. And I'm trying quite delicately in some of these things that I'm participating in to kind of push for different ways of doing things slightly from below. So I'm just kind of curious to hear different, ways of doing things and to hear different experiences. I feel quite disempowered a lot of the time by these processes. I feel like it's little things. It's things like, we never have a full name. We're always just, Joan from Bakewell. Like there's no. We're kind of portrayed as those charity case studies that you see in the press or on Red Nose Day, like poor little Lucy from Derby, who's living in terrible circumstances, and her story's really heartrending, and she's very plucky but noble, and she's really worth your charity and your attention, kind of thing. And I feel it quite patronizing and disempowering, and it takes away the agency that people like me have and the kind of contribution that we want to make. So I just am interested in the sort of the discourse of this stuff. I think co-production as a value is a very useful thing, and it's helpful for policy making and decision making at all levels for all kinds of service organizations, but also at the national level around policy. But I sometimes think we don't get it right. And that sort of detracts from how meaningful it can be. So in terms of kind of sustaining people's interest, I mean, one of the things I'm pushing for is just that people need some kind of acknowledgement of the time that we give up. That all the professionals in these forums are being paid their salaries, and we're not being paid at all. And I realize there's issues around benefits and how stuff can happen, but I do feel like we want some kind of acknowledgement that our time is also valuable and that we have expertise that we're contributing, and that would help people stay engaged a bit, I think. So thanks, everyone. I'm just really happy to hear more from everyone. Thanks.
Conduct exit interviews with anyone that leads our lived experience panel, so to find out kind of why they didn't want to continue or couldn't continue, so that we can then try and obviously improve anything that we can for members in the future. We try and ring our members for feedback after each session, so we do like fortnightly sessions. A couple of days later, I'll just give people just a quick call just to say, how did you find the session, any feedback, any suggestions? And I find that, and especially a few days after as well, so that it's kind of, sometimes you need to sit with things a while, don't you? So we just check in so that we can put any of their suggestions into improving the sessions, and then hopefully keep them with us. And then for recognition of participation, at the end of any project, we have kind of like certificates, and we'll do like a little award ceremony online or in person if we can. And on those certificates, we've just recently updated them to add more detail about kind of what skills and strengths and stuff were demonstrated in that, so they can potentially use that in the future to show future employers or things like that. So there's another thing we've tried to implement to kind of show our appreciation and recognise the work of our participants.
Really liked feedback, especially about the exit interview. I think it's quite interesting because we don't do that, I don't think, at the moment in my organisation. And especially, during the pandemic and like trying to get back into, normal balance of things, I think we've had a little bit less engagement, I would say, from certain specialisms. So I think, this is something I would bring up to my manager, and hopefully maybe it's something we could explore just to see where we're going right, where we can improve on. And the certificate thing, I would definitely agree with, because we did that for one of our meetings, and just the look of like joy on our service users, just having that, for them it's so special, but also to be appreciated in more than just a thank you, and have something physical to show can go such a long way. So yeah, I'm definitely gonna bring up the exit interview and like fortnightly feedback hopefully, and introduce that.
You said, because I'd been thinking about some kind of online platform. So if we have our service user forum every couple of months, say, there's that space to build community, and where they can go in and, like you were saying, have those conversations and stuff. And I don't know if other people have used sort of online forums or social networking or anything like that in this way before, to sort of keep up that engagement.
We've got a little co-production team, which is really nice, and we're actually going to be doing like a get together with all of our service users that both volunteer but also get involved with co-production within the organization next month, just like a social networking, a very informal event, just something very chilled and laid back, just for them to have that conversation with each other, talk about what they're involved in and what differences it's made for them. And also it's a chance for us to see, work together and how we can better some of the ways we engage with our service users, and review some other agendas and things that we've been wanting to put in place, and get their feedback and their insight into it. So that's something you could always do, is get-togethers, if online doesn't always work, or you could have like a hybrid meeting, I guess, where it's like half online or half in person.
Another thing that we do, because we are national, obviously if you're a more local sort of based charity or organisation, it's easier to do sort of the face-to-face meetups generally, but we do informal catch-ups. So we have like our formal meetings where we have an agenda and things to discuss, and that is normally once a month for some groups. And then in between those sessions, we open up like a Zoom meeting, and so we just have like a catch-up, and it's nothing to do with anything in particular. It's just like checking in on everyone, seeing how they are, what they've been up to, and allowing them the group the space to have informal discussions. And oftentimes you do get a lot from that, but it's without an agenda, because I think when you bring a group together that is designed to talk about a certain topic, they naturally gravitate to that in the end anyway. So it doesn't take any prompting or anything, and it's quite a good way of just allowing that space to have open discussion.
I really like the thought of how we can maintain communities and allow people, because you know some of the feedback we've got is people don't just engage because they want to change the services. It's actually I want to meet people that I don't live with, gain some of my own social networks, so on and so forth. So actually the idea of having these informal catch-ups, Hayley, I really like, because we do that. We've started talking about doing that with our staff team, but actually opening that up across you know all of our services and people that we work with as well would be a really good idea. And I think, you know, coming into the conversation about, you know, ensuring that people come back and keeping up momentum, I think so much of it comes back to maintaining and building a relationship and actually giving time to doing that and protecting that, because the people that I know really well, that I've taken time to, you know, have just a random chat with about what's going on in their life, or I don't know, whatever else, they're the people that do keep coming back, and they're really invested in what we do, and you know they're happy to give the time because they feel like, you know, we keep coming back to rewards, and it's a tricky one, but if someone feels genuinely valued, then they're more likely to keep coming back. And I've, you know, learned that through not doing it, and then, you know, seeing the results from when you do that. So I do think it's so important to, yeah, just show people that you care about them as a human being and not just the value that they might be adding to your project.
I'm just going to add a little bit to that, actually, and it kind of ties in with the rewards and repayments thing, because that was something we really wanted to kind of tackle at the beginning of program, thinking about how we got around that, because it is tricky, but also the lessons we'd learned, that you have to have something. You can't just expect people to turn up for nothing. So our kind of rewards and repayment process, it includes anything and everything from vouchers and payments and the kind of usual things that people think of, but it's also about kind of developing people as individuals. So if there's opportunities within the program and the work that we're doing, where, for example, somebody might have come in to do some work around I don't know, a drug and alcohol service or something, but then actually as you get to know them and those relationships, exactly that, starting to know the person as an individual, you find out that they're really interested in data, and they've got a real thing about data. So we've got a data working group. So it's kind of like, actually, do you want to be part of that as well? So, and all of those things then help to build skills and confidence. And then thinking about kind of routes into employment for people that want to, not necessarily everybody wants to, but sometimes people are kind of working through, and they might, you know, a role might come up in one of our partner organisations or something, and they're like, actually, I wouldn't mind having a go at that. So supporting people to develop in that way as well. So it's kind of the rewards and repayments, including, you know, the sort of social events as well. So we're although we're sort of across Sussex, which is an enormous area and very different across the whole kind of area, most of our meetings are online, but then we're starting now, we've got kind of built a few sort of members to the group, we're starting to think about, actually, can we have like a little coffee morning in Crawley or a little coffee morning in Hastings, so that the people that are local to that area can come to that, and obviously other people could come if they wanted to travel, and we pay for travel. And so it's kind of, I think rewards and repayments can be like a much broader thing, if that makes sense, than just a payment, if that makes sense. And it is, a lot of it is about, as you say, building those relationships, getting to know people, really making it a bit of a development journey as well. So it's not just about, you know, what's your lived experience in this thing, what actually, who are you as a person, and what can you bring, and what do you want to develop, and how do you want to grow as well. So yeah.
I love this idea of that have been discussed. One thing that we have found work quite well is actually engaging people in being part of the evaluation of anything that is being produced, and make that an integral part of the co-production. It doesn't stop when we have a product. It has to go beyond that. You know, is it good? Does it work for what we wanted it to do as a group, as a collective, and keeping people engaged in the evaluation. And what's most interesting in that is the ripple effects. Sometimes the effects of what we co-produce is not exactly where we wanted it to be or what we expected it to be. So it's looking at these kind of ripple effects and trying to build that almost like a little task force within the co-production team or amongst the collective intelligence group to actually keep an eye on what's happening, even several times before. But that is really important to keep that link in terms of ownership. And I love the idea that Andre shared as well. They are really great because you can build skills on top of these evaluations as well. That's all I wanted to share. Thank you.
So we've had our group session, say for example, we've got a group of people with lived experience who have come along, and it's the first time that we've met them, and everyone's met each other. Really great discussion, everyone's got loads of energy, and then they go away, say you're meeting on a monthly basis or a quarterly basis. How do you get them to come back? What things have you done previously? I think some of them probably will be relevant to the keeping the momentum as well. But is there anything in particular that you've noticed draws people back? I know some of you had mentioned you've done exit interviews and things, so there may be something from that you've found hasn't worked. Is there anything in particular anybody wants to share with that one?
A lot of our work is quite ongoing. And what we really are hoping for is that people will kind of stay the course and want to be part of the whole process and stuff. So I guess there's something around kind of letting people know what's coming up. So they might have had that, you know, might have had a really good sort of meeting, the first meeting, and had got some plans together. But then it's about actually, right, so at the next meeting, this is the kind of idea behind what we'd like to do next, if you see what I mean, and having that discussion as part of the meeting. So there's almost like a plan. People know kind of there's another worthwhile reason for coming back again, if that makes sense. There's like the next step or whatever that might be. So yeah, I guess for us that would be something that we try to make sure that people know, yes, we've had this conversation about this, but we still have to have lots of conversations about this bit, and this bit needs to be planned, and that bit. And so yeah, almost having a bit of a future plan so people can see a bit of a journey ahead and kind of make a sort of shout on whether they want to be part of that journey. Or, and I think there's something else around being flexible as well. So kind of something that's come up, I'm just thinking in particular, EB that has been working with us, and she's had some medical stuff come up, which has meant she's had to take a step back. So there's something there as well about being flexible, about people being able to dip in and out when they want to, because as all of us, stuff comes up for people. And although at the beginning of something, people might be really, you know, yeah, I want to see this through, I'll be part, I can be there for those meetings. Nobody knows what's around the corner, if you know what I mean. So I think for us, it's really important to be flexible, but make sure people don't feel pressured into coming to something when they really have got other things that they need to be kind of focusing on, but also would feel welcomed back if they had to miss a couple of sessions. So it's, I guess it's something about the environment and the space that you're creating is a welcoming space. If that makes sense.
Just, yeah, I totally agree with the flexibility. We've had that with a few people, you know, they'll even been like a year, they've dipped out and then they've come back, and there's been no, oh, you know, where have you been type of conversation, apart from, you know, how have you been, you doing okay, no questions asked kind of thing. I think people appreciate that. But also a lot of the kind of projects we work on can sometimes be, the change that we're trying to achieve is seems so big. I think sometimes it's about celebrating and recognizing the small changes that you're making along the way, because otherwise it can feel really intangible and like you're not making any progress. And that's, you know, you're coming back meeting after meeting, and I don't know, for what we do, maybe they're not quite seeing changes on the ground in their service yet. But, you know, being very open about, and it does come back to the transparency, you know, well, at the top level, this is what we're doing, and hopefully this is how we're going to make it trickle down. And I guess having that really open conversation about expectations too, you know, you're probably not going to see the repair service immediately become better, but this is what we're going to try and do to hopefully do that over the, you know, the life of the contract or however long it is. So yeah, celebrating the small wins, recognizing those changes as well as the big ones.
Within our group sessions, you know, like how I did in this one. So when you come into the room, you put a number in the chat box to see where everyone is in terms of how they're feeling. And then we do that again at the end. And that allows us, not particularly this group, because obviously this is quite a flexible group in terms of people come in and out, and but within our co-production groups, that allows us to check in with people. So if they're, you know, not in a great place, and people really appreciate that, you know, just to offer them a chat afterwards, or if they want to have a phone call, you know, the next day or something. It really shows that you value that person. It brings it back to that being, you know, recognizing and appreciating them as human beings.
Yeah, I was just going to follow up on what you were saying there, Hayley, because that's something we've done as well. And we have a check-in and a check-out, and we do that in all of our meetings. So not just sort of lived experience meetings, but in all of our meetings. But it's really useful sometimes because it gives people, and people have the option to not check in if they don't want to. So there's not that pressure to say how you're feeling if you really don't want to. But also it kind of gives the opportunities for people to say, actually, I just want to sit quietly and listen today. Or so and again, it's about sort of building those relationships and stuff for people to feel comfortable to do that in that space. But yeah, check in and check out is something we use every time, basically. So it really works nicely. And it's just that's particularly the checkout at the end is also the opportunity for people to say, actually, I found that really tough, or I found that really confusing. And then you've got a kind of bit of a way in to say, actually, should we have a chat afterwards then? Or, you know, and then we could just run through it again or whatever. So yeah.
I think there's been some really great discussion today, and I think a lot of it has been solutions based, which I really love, you know, in terms of things that either have worked for people or great innovative ideas that people have had, in terms of co-production. So, and I think that's always really good to focus on, you know, the good things that are happening. If there was like one key thing that you would take from today and that you want to try and implement within your groups or within your sessions, for example, what would that be, do you think?
It's interesting that the bit around kind of chats and group chats and stuff in between sessions, because that's something that we tried, but nobody was really keen at the time to do it, particularly because of that sharing information thing and stuff like that, and people wanted to kind of keep their privacy and stuff, which was absolutely fine. But I'm just wondering if I might kind of bring that up again and see how people feel on this program, because it's a different group of people. Just it's something I hadn't thought of until we mentioned, because kind of previously it wasn't sort of liked. So yeah, I might bring that up again and see what people think.